What's up, Marvelites, and welcome to a brand new episode of the MCUExchange podcast. This is episode 21. Yay! Woo! My name
Woo!
is Aaron. I'm your host for this episode. Alongside me is Joe
Hello.
and Charles.
What's up? Glad to be back after my
Yeah,
absence
welcome back.
last week.
Welcome back, Charles. Shout out to our
Welcome back.
listeners over at Spotify, YouTube, Anchor, Google Podcasts, and Breaker. Please do like us on Facebook at facebook.com/TMCUExchange. You can also follow us on Twitter. That's twitter.com at MCUExchange. All right, let's head over to the rundown of the latest news about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First up, a freshly released news a little over an hour ago. J.K. Simmons is contracted for multiple Spider-Man movie appearances as J. Jonah Jameson. Charles, what do you think about this news when you first read it?
I find his specific comment about he was asked whether we could expect him showing up. He used, I think the phrase used was, I wouldn't say expect,
Mhm.
but it's nice to know that he is signed on for more appearances because from the ending of Far From Home, it seems like he was going to be at least a key part of Spider-Man's next story. So, I mean, it'd be weird if for Spider-Man 3 he doesn't show up
Yeah,
after that fucking massive ending Far From Home gave us. So, it's sort of expected, but it's also nice to see, you know, him acknowledge that he's back and he's excited to be back.
yeah, being one of the holdovers of the previous Samurai trilogy, it's really exciting prospect.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Joe, during when you're watching Far From Home and you have no idea that he will appear, what was your initial reaction when he actually appeared in the mid-credit scene?
Oh, I was excited. I was really excited because we always had the discussion for a long time who would replace the iconic J.K. Simmons, and a lot of thought, well, now that he's Commissioner Gordon in Justice League, we're not going to see him in Spider-Man. And then him actually showing up was a huge, huge surprise. I even remember a lot of people superhero films in Austria isn't like the biggest thing ever, but even then, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, it's the original Spider-Man." The only thing it caused is that people thought, "Is this connected to the original one?" I like that he technically is still the same character. And what I think was great is that they utilized the story of the sequel and gave us a good reason why J.K. Simmons hates or distrusts Spider-Man. It's not just he's a menace because he's a guy who swings around town and could steal your wallet, but they give him an actual reason to that kind of, and it's a surprisingly topical incarnation of the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you pointed out because he already has an actual reason instead of in the Sam Raimi trilogy, he has no apparent reason at all of hating the web slinger.
Yeah. And it has that Alex Jones angle of conspiracy, which in the MCU you at some point you have to believe that, yeah, what the fuck did Tony Stark leave his entire empire to 15-year-old? All the most
Mm.
powerful weapons on the planet are in this kid's hands, and Mysterio did the perfect kind of thing to just blow up Spider-Man's spot, and it ties in very very well, like Joe said, to this new version of J. Jonah Jameson. Finally, he has a valid reason for hating,
Yeah,
rather fearing this kid. I mean, if I was in that world, I would probably also be freaked out that this fucking 15-year-old kid has access to massive satellite weapons that could eradicate thousands of people at a whim. So, it's such a brilliant move.
And I'm curious if he will have like a redemption arc of some kind. If we'll see a good side, like the Sam Raimi films did showcase that he protects his people, and I do hope that they don't
Yeah.
turn him into a full blown villain, or at least give him some
Mhm.
kind of arc of his own.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's a given that it's a given already that he will show up in next year's Spider-Man 3. Aside from that,
Mm.
guys, I have a question for both of you. Where do you think will he show up next? Is it going to be in a Sony film to further establish the MCU ties, or is it going to be in a more likely Spider-Man 4 down the road? Charles?
Well, I think the obvious one is a Sony film for sure. I mean, if they
Yeah.
fucking paid Michael Keaton X amount of money just to show up for that fucking stupid Morbius trailer. I mean, you could bet that they're also willing to pay J. Jonah Jameson to show up, rather J.K. Simmons to show up for one of their films. But I mean, it's so hard to separate J. Jonah Jameson from Spider Man. I mean, Joe mentioned him having an arc for his future appearances. I mean, in the comics, J. Jonah Jameson did commission the creation of Scorpion in the comics, so they could do something like that
Oh,
as
yeah.
this crazy
Mhm.
right wing conspiracy theorist creating his own version of Spider-Man with Scorpion, who exists in the MCU. Maybe you know his role becomes bigger, and he does end up becoming a sort of a villain character. But maybe he also gets redeemed once he finds out that, whoa, this kid's not that bad. In fact, I created the monster and
Mm.
not Peter Parker. So
Yeah.
there's so much opportunity. I hope Sony doesn't squander that opportunity.
Mm. I do also wonder if they're going to use this opportunity to get the old, like, because there's always the theory that they're building up to Sinister Six. That's like the popular, once you have more than three villains in Spider-Man films, we're going to get the Sinister Six. But like, now that we know that Peter Parker's a 15-year-old, he's pretty much blamed for the murder of Mysterio and potentially other people, how he portrays it. Would they release the other prisoners because they can't really connect them to this act of what Spider-Man did?
Hmm. Right.
Yeah. Joe, how about you? Where do you see him appearing next, aside from Spider-Man 3?
My guess would be Venom, the Venom sequel. I
Oh,
just think they're probably gonna have him like in the background with a news article about Cletus Cassidy escaping from prison and him talking about it, or potentially just complaining about Spider-Man being on the loose. That would be my theory of how they're gonna handle it.
and uh, one possibility is, of course, just like in the Spider-Man game, like his voice is in the background, reading some news online, maybe. Yeah.
He's a menace.
Or was a menace. Catch him. Next up, next up is we have a Guardians of the Galaxy news here. It was tweeted several days ago by James Gunn that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 will come out a little after 2021. Joe, when do you think is the more probable year that this film will come out? Is it 2022, 2023? I'm pretty sure it's phase 5 already, but
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
So I think if we didn't have the current situation we're in, we could have probably seen it by 2022, at least beginning or early 2022. But now I would say it's so uncertain. I if probably going towards the end of 2022 or the beginning of 2023. I just the a little after 2021 is a little confusing because
Yeah,
we
very
know
true.
pretty much the schedule up until that point. They already kind of teased what's following in 2021, and we don't even know if like they can keep this timeline they're holding right now. So it's a big question mark. But I do hope rather sooner than later because the franchise really needs to come back.
Yeah, it's been a while. The last sequel was 2017, right? So, wow, six
Yeah.
years, probably 5, 6 years. Charles, what are
And
your
two,
thoughts?
It's again, like we always talk about with all the Corona delays. I think the rule of thumb right now should be expect things to be late. I think James Gunn might be even a little bit optimistic with his his projection on when Guardians could film. I mean, with all the crazy things happening in the world, oh my god, it's so fucking crazy. I think the last thing everyone's thinking about right now is, oh, when is Guardians gonna film? So
yeah,
uh, I think the a little bit over 2021 is a bit generous for with the current state of affairs. But I'd if I had to put money on it, I'd say it's 2022 earliest.
Mhm.
But like I think 2022 mid 2022 or maybe even
yeah,
later 2022.
What's interesting about this is that during this pandemic, in the past few weeks, or months rather, James Gunn has been teasing a lot of details about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. He recently joined several quarantine watch parties for Volume 1 and 2, and he has been saying a lot about these characters. And I hope he does it again a few years from now, by the time Volume 3 is going to be released.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's currently rewriting the script because he did confirm that they did finish filming for Suicide Squad. So
Yeah.
while they're in post production, he's probably also started a little bit for Guardians of the Galaxy, which would also explain why he believes it would come out earlier rather than later.
I was just gonna say that Joe was just mentioned Suicide Squad. I was just gonna say that at this point I'm kind of more excited for Suicide Squad than Guardians because I mean this is totally off topic, but those Suicide Squad set photos that leaked a couple of weeks back or months back really made me super excited. That at this point James Gunn's probably just very hyped to get Suicide Squad complete.
Last news on the list is about Agents of Shield, and the Agents of Shield showrunners have confirmed that they will have an MCU tie somewhere within the season. Joe, us being big Agents of Shield fans, as evidenced by the previous episode, what do you think? Is that MCU tie? Is it just a throwaway line? Is it just a character, or is it a full-blown MCU crossover?
What tips me off is the fact that they word it as they bump into something.
Oh yeah,
It's such a strange phrasing because when you say you bump into something, you commonly mean into someone. So it would tease that they're bumping into a character from the main MCU's timeline. Now, we discussed this last week, but I have my personal favorites that I would love to see appear. I still think the show is technically still very Coulson focused. I mean, they
yeah,
keep bringing him back after he passed away in universe. But for me, I think that while like Captain America would make sense from a thematic sense, or just kind of a nice bow tie with Endgame as the end of an era. I'm slowly growing on the fact that maybe they'll tie into characters that appeared or that are still like going into a new direction with like Nick Fury, because he appeared in the first episode. It kind of also makes sense for him to appear in the last episode to kind of
yeah.
put that bow tie on it. Just the question is that the whole, is this a different dimension? This is a completely different timeline. Will they even explain how that works? It's all these theories we still have. So I think we're really going to have to see how the show goes on, especially with a time travel aspect.
Hmm.
What exactly that means.
Yeah, when they first introduced time travel, it's going to be a risk either way, right? So I'm really hoping that they would explain it well, and they would actually explain it during the first episode. But I think that's just the first explanation of many in the upcoming episodes here in this final season, and it will be a love letter for the fans, as mentioned by Chloe Bennett, and I'm excited to what lies ahead. Charles, what do you? Charles, how about you? I know you're not a fan of Age of Shield. Just wanna check on you. What do you think is that MCU tie that is being teased here by the showrunners?
I mean, we did read that leak just before we
Yeah,
recorded about what could happen. No spoilers. I don't want to ruin the fun for everyone because it does kind of look legit. But it's something that we've all sort of been expecting since I don't know season 5 or season 6, and how does Shield fit with all the Thanos stuff with Endgame and Infinity War. From the looks of it, it looks like it's gonna like Joe said, it bump into that. I don't think it's gonna be, I think how it's gonna tie in is just gonna be very matter of fact. It's not gonna be a massive, massive plot point where, like Ward is Hydra. It's not gonna be like that kind of story where the season's gonna be about it. I think it's just gonna be like an Easter egg at best. Hence the code of them bumping into
so,
the
yeah,
films, and it's not gonna be a massive tie-in. But yeah, I mean, the Thanos stuff. I hope it's that. I hope what we read is real because it does sort of give closure to what fans have been wanting. Fans have wanted the Shield stuff to connect with the Thanos stuff. So fingers crossed that happens for the fans. But yeah, I think that's at least what's gonna happen.
yeah. I think that's a pretty good cherry on top. If they somewhat reference the snap, maybe a throwaway line, maybe a news report or something. You know, it's gonna be great. It's a pretty good possibility that this MCU tie is more likely to be featured in the season finale, right, Joe?
Yeah, I think the season finale, like, it's always been so self-contained that it only makes sense to really do it at the finale,
Yeah,
especially with Marvel TV's era technically ending with this episode. with that episode.
Indeed. And now let's move on to a new segment for our MCUExchange podcast. Since Agents of Shield is already premiered, we're gonna talk about the latest episode here in this segment. It's called MCUExchange TV Season Pass, and we're gonna talk about Season 7, Episode 1, The New Deal. All right. So it's like a recap or just thoughts about the episode of Agents of Shield. Actually, it's the first time that the season opens up right after the season finale of the previous season. You know, there have been several time jumps in the past few seasons. It's just pretty surprising. Joe, what are your thoughts about that? That like they're trying to find new ways to tell a story here.
I think it kind of also is like the showcasing of the finality of it. So it's like we don't have time to set up everything new, but we're going to end what we set up. Plus, technically, I still kind of see this season as part of the sixth season because, you know, from an episode count, this is technically what we had as a full season to begin with. Oh, yeah. And that this kind of episode kind of solidifies the fact that this, if they had season 6 with 22 episodes, this was probably going to be the entire arc building up. Like each, after the half, they're going to have a new season. And that probably, I wouldn't be surprised if the ending of this season ties into the last season more, because it feels like that overarching plot point that they were doing.
Yeah. And the season premiere has a lot of tidbits. There's a lot of great tidbits about the show as a whole. From Phil Coulson going back to his roots as the old Coulson that gives daddy jokes. gives dad jokes. From Simmons being a badass now, that like from being a scared scientist from season 1, her character evolved into a more badass version of herself here. She's taking the lead here in season 7, and also the usual quick action. Deke being that has a sense of fashion for 1930s, even though he's not from there. He made a unique change to the wardrobe. And what do you think is the mystery here? Joe, about the serum? Because there's been a theory I've read somewhere. It's from Screen Rant. There's a theory that the serum is somewhat connected to the Red Skull because the guy delivering it is the father of Gideon Malik, who we saw part of the council in the Avengers, who later on become a huge villain in season 4 of Agents of Shield.
First of all, Gideon was still one of my favorite tie-ins to the films because that just kind of was a great way to connect more and more to the MCU, which is ironic speaking where we are now with the series. But great surprise that it is his father. What I'm listening out on is that he's not part of Hydra as of this point. Yeah. So I'm guessing that, yes, it would make sense to have some kind of ties. My theory was... So the thing is, I was unsure if it was green or blue. It looked a little greenish at a first glance. So I'm unsure... Yeah, so I'm unsure if this is the version... So that this is a version of the Super Soldier Serum where he might be trying to sabotage the experiment in some way.
Yeah.
Or if it may have a connection to Hive, because that is like the one storyline that you're going to have the hardest time referencing back towards. That's Hive blood or some kind of summoning thing they do, like from those rather traditional aspects.
Alien blood, right? Something.
Yeah.
And
again,
the interesting about that is that the case of the vial has that usual Hydra symbol of octopus tentacles. Yeah, so there's a possibility that that it will tie up. And the next episode will be premiering next week, and it has an intense promo. Triskelion blowing up, huge action. May finally waking up from that from being stabbed. Yeah. Okay. Before we move on, favorite moments. Joe, you first. Favorite moments from the episode.
Favorite moments, definitely just Coulson returning. That was actually a very as a fan of the series, it's kind of heartbreaking seeing him go through like 2 years worth of memories, of very unpleasant memories, and just the fact of having him back again, and then him talking to Mac, who is really one of my favorite characters in this series. And I also have to give kudos to some just fantastic action sequences. The fight in the kitchen was great. Kevin Tancheron is just a fantastic action director, and they really banked on that.
My favorite moments are, first off, I agree, Coulson returning. His first scene, like he's trying to figure out what happened, like what's happening. That scene where 2 years of memory flashing in his mind in 10 seconds. That's crazy. I would agree with him if he doesn't want to return, because that's a lot to take in. And also the return of Sears' favorite Patton Oswalt as Agent Koenig.
True. Of course,
Yeah.
it was a Koenig. We were correct.
Yeah, it was a Koenig, and establishing the first seeds for the SSR, appearance of Franklin Roosevelt. That's surprising, and I'm wondering who else from the history of the United States will appear in the upcoming episodes.
Oh,
So,
definitely.
was Patton Oswalt, was he the dad of the Koenigs?
Great grandfather, I think.
Great grandfather.
Or grandfather, I think.
Grandfather, yeah, but he's not part of Shield, so he's like so he sells alcohol illegally because it's during the Great Depression, which is kind of ironic given how loyal and everything the Koenigs are in the future.
Right.
And his basis.
I'm just computing in my head, like, how, if he's a grandfather, then I guess it makes sense that the Koenigs are middle aged also in present day, because it's 1931, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's interesting about it, Charles, is that his base is one of those hidden SSR bases.
That was a cool touch.
Yeah.
I think it even has the same code name, the Swordfish, which was the password to get in.
Yeah, and there's a cool nod there to Sword, right? For possible future references.
I do have to say, I forgot to mention, one of my favorite moments was also just because we know Coulson is technically a history major and history buff, but the moment where he helps FDR sit down, was kind of like, because that I was reading up on it. I didn't know that it's such a true story that was hiding the fact that he was in a wheelchair, and the way they just portrayed it. I mean, I don't know how realistic it is, but it still is such a touching way to kind of showcase history and some major players in our own history. And great casting on that. What a lookalike they found.
Oh, yeah. And also, what's great about Age of S.H.I.E.L.D. this season is that they're giving commentary about United States history, which is a great callback and a great theme.
Yeah.
All right. Now, let's move on to the exchange. And now we're going to talk about here, we're going to break down... one moment. It's about which characters from S.H.I.E.L.D. would have make it into the mainline MCU. Maybe we can pick 2 or 3, or who wants to start? Joe, Charles?
Joe,
I can start with that. Oh, yeah. For me, so if we talk about from character wise, I do kind of want, like, it's weird to think how a lot of people complain that these characters were annoying in the beginning, but Fitzsimmons is probably, like, next to Coulson, like, the heart of this franchise, of this TV series. And I would love, because especially Ian DiCosteca, I'm sorry if I butchered that name, but he gives such an amazing performances throughout this franchise. And again, he's missing, like, every freaking beginning of the season. He's gone now. But I just would love to see that actor, if not the character of Fitz and Simmons, at least these actors returning in some capacity in the MCU. And of course, I know it sounds stupid, but I kind of want to know if there is more future for Coulson. Clark Gregg just kind of became the talk. So he's like the representative of the MCU at this point, especially how he talks about it. He was back in the day when they did the Avengers. I remember the Avengers marathons. They shot like extra sequences of him introducing things. I would love to see him return in some capacity. I know it's, for the mainstream, how far they've come, it probably makes no sense. But I can't imagine the MCU without Coulson in some capacity or being around in some form.
So you want him to return as LMD Colson?
I'd be okay with it. Or, if they do, like, I wouldn't be surprised given that, now the MCU has confirmed that Nick Fury's eye was scratched out by a cat and he pretends it's something extremely important, that he would hide Coulson somewhere, somehow. Like, it would be a great nod to the TV show if they want to make Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. completely non-canon, which, is very likely. Just a little tidbit of him hiding in Tahiti. I think most fans would be like, that's a great touch. This is the mainline MCU. He's still around. We still get Clark Gregg. Or at least if like they have documentary series or stuff about the shows or a Disney Plus series where they give him some kind of role of like talking about the MCU timeline. I still think what would be a lot of fun is if the MCU made like a documentary style within their universe. Mm-hmm. With him as a historian talking about how the MCU history has formed and just give us a glimpse of how different it is from our own.
Yeah, the last time Clark Gregg appeared as Coulson was during Captain Marvel, which is a prequel. So maybe if the MCU will further explore the possibilities or the prequel thing, the prequel films, maybe we could see him pop up somewhere.
Which would be great.
Yeah.
See more of him and Young Fury.
Oh yeah, the Young Fury without the scratched eye, maybe. Because even though his role in Captain Marvel was small, he had a huge impact on me because I love Coulson as a character.
Mm.
Yeah, Charles, how about you? Which Shield characters do you want to pop up in the main MCU timeline?
Well, I'm thinking more of the villains because some of them have been staples of the comic book, like Graviton. I'd love to see Graviton in the actual films because he's such a heavy hitter to the point that even the Avengers can't stop him alone because he's so fucking strong. I'd also like to see what's his name, Deathlock in the MCU as a sort of like a Terminator type character. I think they should go on full crazy with the time travel aspect of Deathlock and just incorporate, like I said, like a Terminator type character. Deathlock is a pretty fucking good bet.
He'd be great for Loki, actually, thinking about it.
Like a future brand of soldiers developed by the government. Basically, the next stage of Captain America's serum, so to speak. I'd also like to see. I think once the Secret Wars show happens, I mean, we covered it a couple of weeks back. I think we're inevitably gonna get the MCU's own version of Quake. That's unfortunately not gonna be in it. I think we're also gonna get Yo-Yo, basically all the characters that we've come to associate with the Shield show. So there's that. But yeah, but as far as Shield characters showing up, I'm really leaning towards the villains. I'd love to see what's his name, Mr. Hyde as an actual fucking Hulk-ish character and not the low budget TV version Calvin we got from season 2.
Alien Squid.
He needs to be someone like the Hulk. Maybe they could get Kyle MacLachlan to come back, but give him like a Hulk makeover, and it'd be amazing. But yeah, for me, I'm leaning towards the villains because Shield has some of the better villains in the MCU, and some of them are actually from the comics. So I'd love to see Shield villains show in the films.
I think like Absorbing Man would be a great character also to reintroduce, especially for like a Secret Warrior show.
For me, I'd like to see some Inhumans. Some Inhumans in the MCU, of course. I agree that Quake and Yo-Yo should be there in the MCU, regardless of the actress. But it would be a bonus if Chloe Bennett and Natalia Cordova would be back as them. as their characters, reprising the roles from the TV show, which is like highly unlikely, but keeping my hopes up. Well,
Yeah.
with the MCU introducing Moon Knight, Ghost Rider being developed, I think Robbie Reyes should be a shoe in as well. You know, in the future,
Mm,
not now, but after the Ghost Rider Disney Plus series or film will have premiered, maybe a tease of other types of Ghost Riders that the MCU can incorporate. So many characters. How about you guys? What do you think about which character do you want to see pop up? Which Agents of Shield character do you want to see pop up in the main MCU timeline? Please do tweet us over at twitter.com/MCUExchange. You can also comment that when we post this episode on Facebook. That's facebook.com/the MCUExchange. And you can also listen to our podcast over at several different outlets from Google, Anchor, Breaker, and over at YouTube. This has been episode 21 of the MCU Exchange podcast. You guys keep safe. My name is Aaron. You can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/AaronChino. That's AaronChino. You can also follow Joe on Twitter.
I'm at that Abel, ThatAberl.
And you can also follow Charles on Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at CFS
On that note, this episode has come to an end. Thank you for listening to the MCU Exchange podcast. See you next week.
Till next time.
Bye. Woo!